So you want to hire a plumber or an electrician, or you've got a landscaping job, you want to build a pool, have a home improvement, you have to look for a contractor. Now, some of these things can be planned out. That'd be the way to do it, but a lot of these things can't be. It's an emergency. So how do you find a good contractor? That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome. I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau serving the Pacific Southwest. It's a new gig for me, so you're with my first podcast here, and actually it's my first podcast anywhere. So it could be a little bit of a bumpy ride, but thanks for being here. With me for this first version, thanks for being here, guys. Tom Cole, who's Executive Director of the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. Tom, thanks.
Thank you.
And Cindy Casaus, who is the Assistant Director of the Register of Contractors. Cindy, thanks.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. Yeah, we worked well together at ABC 15 when I was doing that. And Tom, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. It's an honor to be on your first podcast.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to it, knowing that it was the first one. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Anyway, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, I guess the goal is, I want to work with businesses and consumers. There are a lot of great businesses out there. Many of them are BBB accredited, which, kind of raise them to a higher standard. But I also want to help consumers find those businesses and not get taken for, which you guys see a lot of. So if we could talk a little bit about what Tom, a little bit about what the Register of Contractors does, how many contractors you have, complaints, totals, are they going up, that kind of thing.
Thanks, Joe. In essence, we regulate the contractors, construction industry in the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
So to be a lawful member of construction, be a licensed contractor, you have to go through our agency.
Okay.
We license over 51,000 contractors here in the state of Arizona.
And growing, I would guess, because the state's growing.
It's quite busy. It's not uncommon to get 30, 40 applications in a day. It's
in a day.
Business is booming. There's no question about it. And the other short answer is verify that your contractor is a licensed contractor. Mm-hmm. And it's as simple as going to our website, roc.az.gov. Our website is a one-stop shop to find out, is your contractor or proposed contractor licensed, mm-hmm. and what kind of regulatory action they have experienced over the time of their licensure.
And it's pretty easy to read. I mean, you can go through there, you can click on the number, and you can see if there have been actions, and you go down to the bottom, it'll talk about open cases, settled cases, whether the license has been suspended. Because, yeah, people could still be doing business with a suspended license, not legally, but be out there and get somebody who shouldn't be, taking them on.
There are a lot of pitfalls. One of the problems we'll see is folks that sometimes purport themselves to be a licensed contractor when they're not. We've even had folks with an ROC number painted on the side of their truck.
Yeah.
And they're trying to pose the part. But a little bit of research, and you find out pretty quickly that they aren't who they say they are.
Now, is that required to have that number on their advertising or on their truck?
So it has been longstanding that you must have the ROC number, and it's not quite as cut and dried as that. Okay. As long as you have a good website, your company website on the side of your vehicle, and as soon as someone goes to that website, your ROC number is prominently displayed on the website, okay. that meets the statutory requirement.
All right, but necessarily if a truck pulls up, doesn't have the number, it doesn't mean that they're unlicensed. It could mean you need to check that out.
Right.
It should have before they pulled up, actually.
And even if it does, it bears further research. You really need to do your homework, okay. And it doesn't take that much work.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the first one. I'm hoping people out there, if you are listening, that you stay with us because we've got some stuff. I've also talked to a couple consumers here in the business that I want to get to. But if you do tune out, I at least want to get these things in. And that is, what are the top maybe 3 things that people should do to find a good contractor and not get taken? You mentioned, I think, the first one, and that's check their licensing, right, through the ROC website.
It's huge. And once you establish whether or not they're licensed, you can get a look into their complaint history. You can get a look and see if those complaints were resolved or if those complaints led to some kind of action against the license. Okay. So an entire licensee's history is there on the website, and it just couldn't be simpler to go. You can type in Joe Ducey and
You won't find a contractor.
Find a lot
if you
about,
do, you don't want them.
about anybody named Joe and anybody named Ducey. I mean,
Yeah.
type in Smith, and every Smith that's ever been associated with a licensed construction company will show up.
All right. So that's important. Another one, Cindy?
Sure. I would, we recommend that you ask for references. So a company that you're considering hiring, they should have no hesitation to offer some prior customers' information so that you can give them a call.
Contact those customers too. Don't just take for granted that.
Absolutely. You want to see their work or have proof that they are a bona fide, legit company and that they do good work.
Okay. All right. Any other one? I mean, what about the contract itself? If you had one that...
So there are statutory requirements. There's 9 elements to a contract. A lot of folks don't understand fully what a legitimate, lawful contract looks like. One of the things that, oddly enough, that's required by law that's often left off of construction contracts is the very last requirement, and that is that if they have any concerns or problems with the workmanship of the contract, they have to have the knowledge to contact our agency, and our agency contact info is required to be on the construction contract.
So if that's left off, could there be a reason?
Yeah, and it's technically not a legitimate contract unless all 9 elements of the contract are met.
I guess in a nutshell, don't go through all 9, but basically is it saying that you have to, it doesn't talk about having to pay per progress or those things, right? It just has to have deadlines.
So it's
start dates.
It's certainly, if you are making progressive payments, those must be lined out in the contract.
Okay.
It must be fully explained what the expectations are.
All right.
But simple things like the name and contact information of the construction company, full information, the scope of the work to be done, the time frames that the work is to be done by, the payment schedule. So I mean, it's fairly straightforward. It's just a complete, full litany of information that would be required in any business agreement.
It's so many times, and you probably see this too, but I used to see contracts where, hey, they said they were going to do, I paid them $30,000 and they were going to do my kitchen and all. And I said, well, okay, I don't like the cabinets and I don't like okay, show me what you wanted. Well, we don't really have that. And you look at the contract, it says like new cabinets. It doesn't say anything specifically about what the counters are going to be made of, anything, that's what people need to have in their contracts if that's what they expect.
No question about it. A very detailed explanation of the scope of work, which would include the materials that were agreed upon and the extent of whether demolition's being required or whether that's being done by another party or the homeowner themselves or customer.
Okay.
So it has to be fairly detailed about what work is to be expected by the contractor and the time frames under which they're going to be done and the cost of the job.
Any businesses listening, it also protects the business, right? Because the consumer can't come back and say, I asked for this. The business would have in the contract, no, this is what we agreed to right here, correct?
And that's great. Good contractors have good contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a longstanding practice of high standards on their agreements with customers.
All right.
One of the things that I wanted to mention, Joe, because you brought up the fact of looking for a licensed contractor, one of the key elements in finding the right contractor for the work you want done is to make sure that their license is in the right scope.
Okay.
So if you hire, it sounds silly, you wouldn't hire a plumber to do electrical work for you. And that's an exaggeration, but very simply, if you have the more specialized the work you need, the more specialized contractor you need. Okay. And so it's really important that you not only acknowledge or research the fact that they have a license, but they have the right license for the scope of work that you're contracting.
And we're going to talk more about that. That's great you mentioned that because I have somebody who talked about that, one of the business owners we talked to. So what I want to talk to is one of the people we interviewed here was a consumer who is in Arizona and complained. Her name is Susan. And she's complaining about a floor that she had, and she had all the flooring done, and then she noticed later that there were issues with the flooring, and she complained to the Better Business Bureau. She filed a complaint here. I think she also complained to the ROC about that because she couldn't get the company back out. But here's what she had to say.
It's kind of like if you can feel it when you walk on it.
Yeah.
Like you can feel it going up and downhill, and then you can see because there's molding around the floor. There's molding from the wall to the floor, and you can see where it's higher, you know. Okay, so right here where my hand is,
Yeah.
there's lots of places like this. And then I'll show you where you can really see how it goes up and down by looking at the tile. Can you see that where it's,
Yeah, I do see the difference.
I finally totally gave up on them when I would call them and the person who answers the phone would just hang up. They wouldn't even, the call would drop. After all the flooring was done, it was a good $13,000.
Okay. You
Yeah.
paid them all in full.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's supposed to be a lifetime warranty that they, anytime, you know, as long as they provided the materials and the labor, that they would fix it if we ever noticed anything wrong.
Is there something that you would do differently now, having had to go through this?
Yeah, well, I would definitely check everything out really, really well after it's done and call right away about anything that bothered me.
So that, well, first of all, I got to hand it to her. The poor woman. I mean, I asked her to go down to the floor and show me the floor. She had to get down with her, but she did point out what the flooring was like. But that's, I don't know if that's a common problem, but it's getting somebody back out there. And they may have thought that's just a minor thing, but for her, she said that, the vacuum cleaner is always caught on it. She's worried about tripping. So is that something, I mean, it seems, can someone file a complaint is there a minor complaint that you guys wouldn't handle, or how do you determine that?
I appreciate the question, Joe. First of all, disclaimer, I'm not sure this lady's status of any claims.
Yeah.
Nice lady.
I get it.
Status of any claims she might have.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking in generalities,
yes.
Based upon what I've just seen.
That's good.
We're a complaint-driven agency, and anybody that feels like the construction work that they have contracted for doesn't meet workmanship standards is encouraged to get on our website and file a complaint with the Registrar of Contractors. We will come out and we will evaluate the scene, the site, make sure that we do a thorough follow-up on all the complaint aspects of the complaint, any allegations, and then we will measure up what we see to our workmanship standards.
Okay.
Now there is room to move in workmanship standards. Some folks expect perfection, and we all strive for it, seldom achieve it. Yeah. However, something that's outside of those workmanship standards qualifies for action. So a citation can be written, and we do warning letters. We do slow rolls into these things. One of the main things we try and do is just get the customer and the contractor together and talk through the
that could be the key. I mean, sometimes they don't even push. The consumer might go to you before they've actually really tried to work with the contractor.
And that does happen sometimes. Yeah. If they get past the point where punch list items or whatever have been resolved, if for whatever reason the customer feels like they don't have any recourse directly with the contractor, then they often do come to us. Yeah. But even at that point, we're going to strongly encourage that customer and that contractor to talk, to work through what the concerns are. And I would say, I don't know if we have statistics, but a lot of our complaints are resolved on that front end without ever going to formal action.
Okay. But there is the threat there of the ROC, so that probably prompts a little bit of better mediation on their parts, correct?
Certainly, quality contractors don't like to have complaints on, especially unresolved complaints on their license. It's not good for business. Yeah. So we see the good providers working really hard to meet the needs of the customer and resolve those before it goes to any kind of formalized process on our part.
Okay.
And Tom mentioned this, but we really just emphasize the importance of communication. So customer and contractor alike to just open up those channels of communication, as Tom referenced. Sometimes it takes that filing of that complaint to get them to communicate.
Yeah,
better.
I think communication is key. In fact, they have a business newsletter going out, and I wanted to write the businesses about. One of the things I learned about keeping me or anybody like me from coming at your door is really through communication. Because a lot of these people, how many times I've heard they didn't call me back. They said they were going to be out here and they didn't come. They didn't, I mean, that's looking at the contractor part of this. But I said, man, if you could just. There are two sides to all the stories. I know they might say to me, the business, well, I tried repeatedly, but these people want to be heard in many cases before they move on to other things. All right, let me go to. I know we're moving here. We got already a lot of time. Let me go to another one here. This is Matthew, and Matthew had an issue, and he had a fence okay, that was falling apart. And the fence was actually on the side of his property. It's like 6 foot, 30 feet long, public property on the other side, people walking and things, and he was concerned about it being an issue. So he hired a contractor to come out, and he gave them a lot of money up front, and is worried about that and couldn't. And here's his story.
We reached out after, I think, 2 weeks, like maybe 3 weeks, saying, hey, do you have a start date yet? It was like, no, we should be able to get you an update in a week or so. And then a week would come and no communication.
What's been done by them?
Nothing.
They've done nothing.
There's no work.
And yet they have about $10,000.
Yes.
And they've had it for about 5 months.
6 months. They've had it for 5 months, 5 months and 7 days. I think a tentative schedule is another pertinent piece of information as part of the contract. To pay 50% and I'm receiving nothing. Like I've paid you to show up in my property and confirm that something needs to be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that doesn't make sense. But to see like incremental progress, and if I have to pay for the materials, as I said, up front, because I have to procure it and potentially sit on it for a week or two, that's fine. But to pay for literally nothing to this date, short of maybe some trip to the Bahamas, I'm sorry to assume, but yeah. Like, where does that 10,000 go?
Yeah, I mean, trip to Bahamas, that's you can sense the frustration there. And we're not commenting directly about this. I'm not telling you who it is and none of that, but just generally about upfront money. I had a huge issue with that when I saw it. Some of them were unlicensed contractors, but others were not. What's your take on that and with people giving a certain amount of money up front?
Well, it certainly boils down to the elements of the contract. That he said the word tentative there, and obviously there are factors that can affect a timeline. We've seen the supply chain issues, over the last few years. COVID and everything really disrupted the supply chain. But short of that, this work schedule should be fairly solid. It should be locked in on expectations, and the word tentative should not show up in a contract.
Okay.
So he should have had a contract with clear expectations on what he was providing up front, what he was going to pay in the interim, and what was going to pay on final delivery. If all those were agreed upon, and then that work schedule should have been solid. And then he has recourse if they don't meet that contractual obligation. Because
he's got it all in the contract. It's spelled right there.
Cindy had mentioned before that there are some industries, the pool and spa industry in particular, that do have stipulations on payment schedules that are statutory. But for most other contracting, it's an agreement between the customer and the contractor on what will be paid. Common sense, a down payment, perhaps a midpoint payment, and then a final payment when the work's accepted makes a lot of sense.
Now, earlier you guys gave your kind of three things that are most important. I think licensing, reviews that you check out, references, and the third one, specifically about the licensing, getting in and finding out if they're licensed for that particular craft.
Correct.
Whatever they're doing.
Scope of license.
Skill.
I would also say continue to check the license.
Okay.
It takes a while for a homeowner to decide who they're going to go with, when they're going to start. You can continue to check that license. Our website gets thousands of hits every month.
Yeah.
So it's up to date. If you're having trouble or one of your listeners is having trouble navigating it, please have them give us a call.
In fact, I did find out you guys are on not Susan's case, but you're on that company. They've already been suspended. So that's what I saw on your website. So that's changed.
Joe, Cindy makes a great point.
Yeah.
Especially if you're undertaking a large project, having a house built, something of that scale, and you run into trouble midpoint in the job where they're not meeting deadlines and the promises aren't being kept, check their status.
Yeah.
From time to time, we have companies that have been in good standing that run into trouble.
Yeah.
And when those problems come, they can come in bundles. Mm-hmm. So if you start seeing a widespread number of complaints against the company you're in the middle of a contract with, it's time to start doing some soul searching, looking over their compliance with the contracts, with the stipulations of the contract, and consider when it's your turn to file.
Okay. You guys mentioned those. I think I would add to those. Well, first of all, avoid too much money up front. That's the main problem I saw. Paying on progress and holding money until the end. Now, this is me. I'm not the state agency, but just from what I've seen, make sure the contract contains specifics about what will be done, and make sure the contract has deadlines and start dates. And that's basically what you guys have said. That's probably what we should be doing.
Huge piece.
Let me go to one last piece of video. Now, this is a contractor out of California. He does business here in Arizona too. So he's licensed here. His name is Anthony Nardo, and Anthony is it's a 40-year-old family business. Operates in 5 states, including California and Arizona. The business is BBB accredited. In fact, he won the BBB Torch Award, which is a big ethics award, back in 2020 and 2022. So he's a 2-time winner. And his company's named Reborn Cabinets. So I talked to him a little bit about, from the business perspective, what he thought about and how he avoids consumer complaints. And that's Anthony, and that's what Anthony has to say.
I think that's very important for homeowners because, I hate to say it, I'm a contractor. We do a lot of home improvement, but not all of us are great. Not all of us are good. Not all of us should be doing this. As you will often see a flooring contractor with a flooring license trying to remodel kitchens. Problem with that is they're not licensed in the trade that they're going to perform. Go to the Contractors Board's website and you look at license type, and it will tell you when you click into it specifically what the license holder is holding. In addition to the type of license, also whether or not they have insurance. We take progress payments based on what we're doing on the project. If the contractor says to you, well, it's a $15,000 job, and you say, okay, that's reasonable. I'll give you a couple of $1,000s to get the job going. You can get your people in line. You have to order some materials. Then when I know that you're going to come into my home that day, maybe I give you $3,000 more because I've seen work happen. And then maybe when you get to a certain milestone in the home, I'll give you a little bit more money. But if you said to me as the contractor, I think I need to get $10,000 up front on this $15,000 job, that is a serious red flag because it tells me you can't fund your own business. And if something goes wrong, I'm probably out the money.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And that's what we talked about earlier about getting those specific licensings that I don't think a lot of people really look beyond the initial.
I'd tell you, Joe, again, we regulate workmanship standards for licensed contractors. But the other thing that gets contractors in trouble is they may be good craftsmen. They may be good at the trade that they've trained for and that they've applied for a license for, but they're not very good at business. And that's what also gets contractors in trouble. So I can't think of a better nexus than to look at our website and find out if they're licensed within the scope that you are looking for. Get the references that Cindy mentioned, but also check their status with the Better Business Bureau. I mean, I think that's a good 2-pronged attack to make sure you're hiring a reputable agency.
Matt Failing, are you listening to this right now? He's a CEO here. He's going to love that. We all love that. And I think it's great. Yeah. And I think too often people look at those things afterwards. Well, I checked their license and they don't, and they're suspended. Or I checked their reviews and they're horrible. Well, yeah, but that's something probably should have done beforehand. Checking the BBB reviews, because it's one of the few places I went there as a reporter. You could go there and actually see the verbatims. And see patterns of things that happen that would keep people from maybe wanting them. I want to say Anthony, Reborn Cabinets, he also said that he talked about the reviews being important, and that, to make sure that the reviews are coming from reliable sources, not just anywhere. But he did bring up the talk about and I know I'm harping on this, the upfront money. So why isn't there a demand in the state that there be a limit to the upfront money that people have, or that can be demanded of consumers?
I think that's a great question. Arizona is not a highly regulated state when you compare us with some other states. I can only imagine our lawmakers, feel like that's over-regulation. Again, that's speculation on my part. The statutes of regarding we operate under Title 32, Chapter 10. It's a long-standing Arizona revised statute. Our agency's been in existence since 1931. Most good business providers don't ask for things out of bounds like that, and I think that's the cautionary tale. take a common sense approach to your engagement with a contractor. And if they're asking for something that seems outlandish, it probably is. And if you haven't done your homework, that's a big, as your contractor there mentioned, it's a big red flag. So do your homework.
So right now, there's no law that talks about you have to save a certain amount to the end, those kinds of things. Here, there is in California where Anthony is, $1,000 or 10%, whichever's less, up front, and then pay on progress. So, which I think is a good practice if you can get the contractor to agree to that. But I don't know how many contractors would want just $1,000 up front. Now, when it comes to pools, there is a law. And I don't know if we talked about that on or off camera, but here
we talked about it a little bit, but it's very specific. Yeah,
very specific to pools.
I believe it's 25%, no more than 25% for that initial deposit. And there's some additional statutes related to that.
Okay, but not for this, and that would take legislative action here in the state in order for that. You follow their rules,
right? For scheduled payments like that, it would have to be in statute.
Okay. Let's talk about a couple other things I want to get before we end. One is the recovery fund. And this is something that, from what I know contractors pay into it, licensed contractors, and that if you have a licensed contractor and there's an issue, I don't know what the issue has to be, you can go into that. Maybe you can be, repaired, refunded a certain amount of money that you let out. So if you could go into that a little bit and what the qualifications are and what you have to go through.
So it's important to point out it's the Residential Contractors Recovery Fund.
Okay.
So it does not apply to commercial contracts and contracting whatsoever. But as part of as an assessment on top of licensing fees, residential and dual licensed contractors pay into this recovery fund. And residential customers who have had a problem with their contractor go through a hearing process. Their case is adjudicated, and once they are found to have had damages, the verified damages, then they qualify to apply for recovery funds.
Yeah.
Now, there's limits on the recovery fund. Per each claim, $30,000 maximum payout.
Okay.
Per each license, if there's multiple claims against a single license, the limit's $200,000.
Okay.
So we talked a little
bit
about
limit per incident per.
So if there's multiple claims against one license,
right,
the most that a single license will pay out is $200,000.
Okay, so if you have 20 complaints at more, okay, let's see how that goes.
So you're bringing up prorating, pro rata.
Mm-hmm.
We prorate a lot of awards because of the statutory limits on what can be awarded, and then just the cost of things and the size of claims. You can't build a swimming pool. I can't imagine now for anything under $65,000-$70,000 for an average size pool. And in the case of, for example, abandonment of a pool in the middle of the job, and a lot of money's been put down, it's really hard to be made whole from an award from the recovery fund. I think our average we figured out is about 62 cents on the dollar as it stands right now.
Yeah. Well, at least you have that. I mean, I think that's a good thing.
It's not intended. At this point, the intent is not to make the claimant whole, and there are civil civil court recourses to go after real damages. But it's a help.
What about bonds? You hear people. I mean, I think people don't know what that means, and even how to access it. If they have a problem with their contractor, a certain amount of bond, but it's a minimal amount, right? Is it like an insurance policy in a way?
So a bond is a statutory requirement to either have a bond or a cash equivalent filed with the state, and that those monies, that bond is in place to offset those types of awards, those types of costs, should the contractor default on the contract.
Consumers count on it, though? Is it much money?
Well, I'm
they're
certainly
into tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah,
I'm certainly not an expert on bonds, but I do know, again, similar to the recovery fund, I don't believe that the typical claim against the bond against the contractor makes the claimant whole. You
were saying that with a lot of complaints, you have to go against a certain amount of pool of money. If there are a lot of complaints, and people are going to probably get a little less. Do you typically see how a business gets into trouble quickly? Can you see maybe there are one or two? I mean, I know I'm talking generally, but one or two complaints, and then suddenly there are 10, 12. Is it that kind of pattern or no?
I wouldn't say typical is a word, but it does happen. And it does seem like certain businesses, when the troubles start, they snowball. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that here recently with a few entities, licensed contractors that have just, for whatever reason, gotten in over their head. They've got too many jobs out there, and they don't have the cash flow to complete the work. And then it does snowball, and that's when we see these larger claims, multiple claims against the same license.
Does anything come to mind? I didn't ask you for this, but does anything come to mind of the actions you guys took recently or recommended against any particular? Yeah. What about unlicensed contractors? How big a problem is that? Let's end with that.
So
a great note. I mean, they're all over the place, it seems. How do the only way I guess people do it is through the reviews and through the licensing to find out.
So word of mouth, folks get turned on to somebody's brother-in-law, or these folks did it for me, and they can do it for you.
Cheap deal usually, probably.
Well, I would think, if you look at it, when you're a licensed contractor, one of the things you have to have is you have to have workers' compensation for your employees, and that's by law. And those things don't come cheap. They're part of the soft costs on top of just the strict cost of labor and materials. So common sense would tell you then that maybe somebody who's not licensed, who's not paying those kind of soft costs for their employees, could undercut the bid from a licensed contractor. Unlicensed contracting is illegal in the state of Arizona. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor. It's also a Class 1 misdemeanor to aid and abet, meaning if you knowingly hire an unlicensed contractor, or if you are a contractor and you subcontract with an unlicensed entity as a subcontractor, you're in violation of state law.
Well, let's back up. So if you're a consumer who's at home and you hire a contractor, you didn't ask about their licensing, and they happen to be unlicensed, would that be a legal problem for them? Could it be, possibly?
We encourage everybody to hire licensed contractors, Joe. What
if you hire one you didn't know?
Well,
is that a? I mean, I don't know. They're probably not going after these people, but
certainly we are not in the business of hunting down consumers who happen to unfortunately hire an unlicensed contractor. I mean, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It could probably be construed if you knowingly hired an unlicensed contractor in order to save money or for whatever reason. Then you are aiding and abetting that unlicensed contractor in illegal activities.
So if there was a storm in the area and you hear a knock at the door, hey, I was just down the street doing whatever. I'm going to come up and do the roof.
I'm telling you, you bring up a great point. When there are natural disasters, that's when these unlicensed entities, especially the unscrupulous ones, tend to kind of congregate and try and help folks in their, quote unquote, help folks. And it's a real challenge for us. I want to draw a distinction, though, between an unlicensed entity doing construction, somebody that knows
entity, because they're not even a contractor.
We don't call them contractors because you're not a contractor in Arizona.
You corrected me on that before, so now I've been corrected by the executive director.
I've only been here since October. She's been correcting me for 5 months, so it's good.
Entity, you can't call them an unlicensed contractor because they don't really have that.
A contractor.
Oh, okay.
So, but you've got folks out there that have come up in the trades. They've been an employee and they decided, for whatever reason, to break out on their own. And they know what they're doing, and they're trying to do quality work. They just aren't sophisticated enough or haven't gotten the right training and education to understand the statutory requirements to be licensed. There are those folks, and we really try hard to get them into the fold. If we get a complaint about an unlicensed contractor and they are willing to go through the steps, once they understand the ramifications of being unlicensed, we will work with them. We'll work to try and reduce some of the penalties to get them into the fold. But there's another type of person out there who's using construction as a ruse, and they're frauds and they're thieves. And those folks we aggressively pursue and try and build cases, and those cases get referred to Attorney General, county attorneys, the appropriate law enforcement. We had a gentleman up in Yavapai County last fall who's made a career basically of being a fraud and a thief in the construction industry. And they finally made enough of a case on him, and he's a gentleman in his 60s, sentenced to 43 years in jail
43 years
for fraud and fraudulent schemes and theft.
What made it that extreme? With the number?
He's got an incredibly long record of defrauding people under the premise of being in construction, and
he was already on extreme probation, and then came back and started it back up.
And how are people finding this guy? How do people find these people? Just they're on Craigslist or they're on some other site, and
he's also one of those door-to-door guys. He's going around.
Okay.
So we've got another, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we've got another group that we feel strongly has been a criminal enterprise, and we got a referral to the grand jury. So we're actively pursuing these folks that are out and out frauds and thieves.
Let me ask you a quick question about Nextdoor. Do you get people on Nextdoor who, I mean, a lot of people go get their, hey, anybody know a electrician in the neighborhood, and then they're recommended. Do you see fake recommendations on there or is that an issue that you don't really know that much about, of some of these contractors that might be unlicensed entities getting on there saying, hey, talk to this guy?
Joe, it comes from every possible angle.
Okay.
And the answer is yes, and the answer is even if those folks come highly recommended, even if those folks are, you did great work for your brother-in-law, check them out.
Okay.
Make sure they're licensed entities. If the job goes bad, you have zero recourse. You have zero recourse. And if you're an unlicensed entity, matter of fact, and you're out there working and you're subcontracting with somebody and they don't pay you, you have zero legal standing as an unlicensed entity to go to court to get your money back.
Okay.
And we can't represent you.
All right. Let's end on that. I'll go into the ROC website, not only to look at licenses and complaint or, investigations and things, but also to see pictures of the worst of the unlicensed contractors, right? Don't you have the dirty 10 list? What's it called? I used to call it the dirty 10.
The most wanted.
See, as a state, I could say the dirty 10, but you guys have to say... or the dirty dozen.
No, we definitely recommend that your listeners visit our website to look up a potential contractor that they might be hiring.
Yeah.
And just to reach out to us. We are here. We talk about communication, and that's something that our agency is very proud of. We have a great team. Give us a call if you've got questions, if you feel like you weren't able to navigate and find this company. Please call us. We are here to help for sure.
All right. That's great. Hey, thank you. We got through it, man. That wasn't that hard.
Thanks,
you guys
Joe.
made it easy. Cindy, thanks as always. Tom, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah,
Joe.
and we'll have to maybe do another one in the future. Great. But so that's it for us right now. I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau, serving the Pacific Southwest, and keep looking at our podcast. More to come. Before hiring, go to BBB.org, check reviews, and for accredited businesses that agree to operate ethically. And see all my podcasted videos, jonoknowsbetter.bbbcommunity.org.